As many people run for their own lives, Marcus is running to save as many as he can. The devastating wildfire in Los Angeles rages, its flames licking the sky and devouring everything in its path. Marcus, a black firefighter in his early 30s, maneuvers through the dense smoke and blazing heat, determined to save as many lives as possible. His body, built from years of grueling physical labor, moves swiftly through the chaos. Despite the suffocating air and the fiery devastation closing in, the heat is unbearable. But he presses on, each breath a struggle, as his mind races with thoughts of his family, his neighborhood, and the people depending on him. As Marcus moves through the smoldering wreckage, he spots Richard, a wealthy white businessman in his 40s, trapped in a luxury car, surrounded by flames. The situation is dire. The vehicle is too damaged to move, and Richard is struggling, disoriented and panicking, his face streaked with soot. Without hesitation, Marcus sprints toward the car, his eyes scanning for a way in. Without a second thought, he uses all his strength to yank open the door and pull Richard out of harm's way. As they both tumble to the ground, a massive explosion rips through the air, sending a wave of heat that almost knocks them down. In that moment of shared terror, there's no longer any question about who they are. There is only survival. Richard, gasping for air, stares at Marcus, the man who saved his life, a stranger just moments before. He tries to comprehend what just happened, the world still spinning. Marcus, stay close. We don't have time to think. Just move. Richard, breathless and confused, nods, barely understanding how he's still alive. The fire rages behind them, closing in. But Marcus, ever the professional, moves with purpose, guiding Richard through the smoke, past the flaming debris. The heat from the fire surges behind them, but Marcus doesn't falter. He leads the way, a beacon of confidence and strength in the chaos, doing whatever it takes to get them both to safety. After narrowly escaping the immediate danger of the wildfire, Marcus and Richard find themselves trapped inside an abandoned warehouse. The outside world is consumed by the flames, the air thick with smoke and the crackling sounds of destruction. Inside the warehouse, the tension is palpable, but they find a brief moment of calm. Though the heat is still intense and the constant noise of the fire looms, for a short while they are safe from the immediate danger. As the hours tick by, both men start to talk. Richard, still shaken, opens up about his life. He talks about his wealth, how he's built an empire and achieved success beyond his wildest dreams. But he confesses an unexpected loneliness. Despite being surrounded by people, he feels disconnected, as if his wealth has built an invisible wall between him and everyone else. No one truly understands him, he admits, and he can't shake the feeling that his life is somehow hollow, despite all he has. Marcus listens intently, taking in Richard's words. When it's his turn to speak, Marcus shares the difficult realities of his own life. He talks about growing up in a rough neighborhood, about the challenges of being a black man in a society that often saw him as less than. He shares the pain of systemic racism and the obstacles he faced every day just to survive. Yet, despite all of that, Marcus found his purpose in becoming a firefighter, dedicated to protecting his community, even if it meant putting his own life at risk. Richard listens, his perspective beginning to shift. The man who had once appeared to be just a strong, capable firefighter is now someone with a deeper, more painful story. Richard begins to see that Marcus's actions come not just from physical strength, but from a life shaped by struggles, resilience, and an unwavering sense of duty. He feels a newfound respect for Marcus, no longer seeing him as just a man of the job, but as someone who has faced tremendous adversity and continues to fight for others. In return, Marcus sees Richard in a new light. Initially, he had viewed Richard as a wealthy businessman, disconnected from the realities that shaped his own life. But as Richard shares his sense of isolation, Marcus begins to understand that Richard's wealth hasn't protected him from pain. The loneliness he feels, despite his success, strikes a chord with Marcus. Though their lives are very different, they share the common experience of isolation in their own ways. The two men sit in silence, the crackling of the fire outside a constant reminder of the danger that still surrounds them. But in that silence, something unspoken bonds them. It's a moment of understanding, an acknowledgement of each other's struggles, hardships, and the human need for connection. In that shared space, neither wealth nor race matters. They are just two men who, despite their differences, are united by the same fight for survival, the same need to find meaning, and the same yearning for connection in a world that often seems intent on dividing them. As time wears on, the distant sounds of helicopters grow louder, signaling the arrival of a potential escape. The fire continues to rage outside, its heat and fury seemingly closing in on them with each passing minute. The building's walls creak under the pressure and the air grows thicker, but there's still a glimmer of hope. The helicopter's arrival is their chance for survival, at least for one of them. When the helicopter touches down, the reality of their situation hits with crushing finality. Only one of them can make it out. The door to the helicopter swings open, and the wind from the blades howls around them. Richard's eyes flicker with a mix of relief and panic, but Marcus stands firm, his eyes scanning the chaos around them, the heat from the fire pressing on his skin. Richard immediately turns to Marcus, urging him to leave with him. He's exhausted, his face pale from the smoke and fear, and his voice carries the desperation of a man grasping at the last thread of his life. "Come on, Marcus. We have to go. You've done enough. You've saved me. Let's get out of here." But Marcus hesitates. His hand clenches into a fist as he stares at the helicopter, torn between his desire to escape the flames and his unwavering duty to the people still trapped in the inferno. He thinks of the community he left behind, the people who need him, the firefighters still risking their lives to save others. His heart beats loudly in his chest, and his mind races, filled with the weight of responsibility. "I can't leave," Marcus finally says, his voice calm but resolute. "Not without knowing I've done everything I could for those still out there." Richard's face falls, his brow furrowing as the gravity of Marcus's decision sinks in. "But you're a hero, Marcus. You've already done so much. You've already saved my life." Richard's voice cracks as he struggles to find the right words. His mind is reeling, not just from the fire, but from the overwhelming selflessness Marcus is showing in the face of certain danger. "You deserve to be saved too." Marcus meets Richard's gaze, his eyes unwavering, and raises a hand to stop him, cutting off the protest. The fire crackles in the distance, but the silence between them is heavy with unspoken understanding. Richard, for a moment, can only watch Marcus, his admiration for the man deepening even further. Marcus's determination is clear. He's not thinking of himself. He's thinking of the people who are still out there, still suffering, still waiting for help. A long moment passes, the wind howling louder as the helicopter's blades whip through the air. The urgency grows, but Marcus stays rooted to the ground, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He knows what he must do. "Go," Marcus says, his voice steady but filled with the pain of what he's leaving behind. "Go, and get out of here. I can't leave just yet. I need to do more." Richard stands there for a moment, torn between gratitude and sorrow, but he knows that Marcus's decision is final. With a nod, he steps toward the helicopter, but not before he turns to face the man who saved him, the man who chose others over his own survival. There's a brief moment of eye contact, a silent acknowledgement of the bond they've formed, and then Richard climbs into the helicopter. As the helicopter begins to lift off, Richard looks down at Marcus, who stands still, watching the sky as the flames continue to encroach upon the warehouse. He can see Marcus's silhouette growing smaller as the helicopter ascends, and his heart aches, knowing that his rescuer has chosen to stay behind. The helicopter fades into the distance, leaving Marcus alone in the inferno, his fate uncertain, but his sense of duty clear. In that moment, Marcus is no longer just a firefighter. He is a symbol of the selfless sacrifice that defines true heroism. He watches the helicopter disappear into the smoke and the fire, knowing that his decision was the right one, even if it meant risking his life for the sake of others. Life exile. As the heat from the flames intensifies and the sound of the helicopter becomes a faint memory, Marcus prepares to continue his fight for those still in the fire, his resolve unbroken. The helicopter rises steadily, its blades cutting through the thick smoke and darkened sky. As it climbs higher, the world below becomes a swirling mass of fire and ash, slowly fading into the distance. Marcus watches it go, his chest heavy with a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that Richard is safe, and sadness because he's still here, still facing the inferno that rages around him. For a moment, Marcus allows himself to feel the weight of the decision. His body is exhausted, battered from hours of fighting fires, but his mind refuses to give up. The flames stretch higher, casting an orange glow over the city. As the helicopter disappears into the smoke, Marcus feels a flicker of doubt in his chest. The fire grows, and with it, the heat intensifies. The air becomes thick with smoke, suffocating, making it harder to breathe. He wonders as he watches the smoke swallow the world around him, if anyone will remember him. Would anyone know the sacrifice he made? Would his actions be forgotten once the fire is gone? His heart aches with the question, the uncertainty settling like a weight in his soul. His mind drifts to his family, his friends, his community, and he wonders if he'll ever see them again. For hours, Marcus moves in and out of hiding, carefully navigating the wreckage of the city, avoiding the fire's deadly reach. The heat is overwhelming, but he presses on. The wind howls, the flames crackle, and the ground beneath him trembles with the power of the inferno. He keeps telling himself that he cannot give up, that he owes it to those he left behind to make it out alive. But deep down, he knows the truth. This could be his final stand. As the fire rages on, Marcus finds himself on the edge of exhaustion, his strength draining with every step. But he refuses to lie down, to surrender. He knows that giving up is not an option, not when there are still people in danger, still lives that need saving. His breath is shallow, his body bruised and scorched, but his resolve remains firm. Every instinct in him screams for survival. As the hours slip by, the fire starts to lose its fury, the wind's changing, and the blaze gradually begins to subside. The flames that once seemed unstoppable start to recede, and against all odds, Marcus finds himself standing amidst the smoldering ruins, battered but alive. Meanwhile, Richard has reached safety, but the weight of guilt hangs over him like a dark cloud. He sits in a temporary shelter, watching the news coverage of the fire's aftermath. His mind keeps returning to Marcus, the man who stayed behind, who chose to sacrifice his own safety to help others. The selflessness that Marcus showed, despite knowing the dangers, haunts Richard. How could he ever repay someone who gave so much for the sake of others? He watches as the firefighters and rescue teams are hailed as heroes, but his thoughts are consumed with Marcus's quiet bravery. He knows that the man who saved him didn't just save him from the flames, he saved him from a lifetime of regret and guilt. Days pass, but Richard can't shake the image of Marcus's determined face as he stayed behind to face the fire. The guilt gnaws at him, each moment reminding him of the life he owes Marcus. As he watches the news, he is struck by a shocking headline: "Firefighter survives devastating blaze." The article goes on to describe how Marcus emerged from the ruins of the city, alive, though injured. The revelation leaves Richard in shock. The man he thought he'd never see again had somehow survived. The reality hits him hard. Marcus is alive, and he's made it through the fire. Richard feels an overwhelming sense of relief, mixed with an even greater sense of obligation. The debt he feels is not just for his life, but for the courage Marcus displayed, the kind of courage that Richard knows he'll never fully be able to repay. But he's determined to try. The guilt that has been festering inside him turns into a burning desire to make things right. He decides to track Marcus down, no matter what it takes. He knows he can never fully repay the man for what he did, but he will do everything in his power to honor the sacrifice Marcus made. Richard begins his search, hoping that he can find Marcus, not just to thank him, but to show the firefighter that his life was not only saved from the flames, but also from the isolation and guilt that had clouded his own. He understands now what it means to be truly connected to someone, and he refuses to let Marcus's sacrifice go unnoticed. He will find him, and when he does, he'll make sure that Marcus knows just how much his selflessness has meant, not just to him, but to everyone who will never forget the man who chose to stay behind and save others. A few days later, Richard, still grappling with the weight of Marcus's selfless act, tracked him down. He wanted to offer Marcus a chance to change both of their lives. Richard invited Marcus to move into his newly acquired, luxurious home, offering him not only comfort and safety, but an opportunity for something greater, a partnership in his business. "You saved my life. Now it's time I do something to change yours," Richard said, sincerity in his voice. Marcus, taken aback by the offer, hesitated. "I'm not used to handouts," he replied, his skepticism clear. He'd never relied on anyone but himself, and the idea of accepting charity didn't sit well with him. Richard was firm, unwavering in his belief. "This isn't a handout. This is a partnership. You've got a unique drive, a sense of purpose that's invaluable. We can build something together." After a long pause, Marcus considered the possibility. Despite his reservations, he recognized that this wasn't just about escaping hardship. It was about a chance to do something meaningful, to make a real difference. And so they began. As time went on, their business partnership flourished. Marcus brought with him a grounded, practical perspective, born from years of resilience and hard work in a community where survival often felt like the only goal. His drive, determination, and sharp instincts complemented Richard's business acumen. The combination of their strengths created something powerful, a company built not only on profit, but on purpose. Together, they used their success to give back to their community, advocating for racial equality, justice, and opportunities for those who had been overlooked or marginalized. They leveraged their platform to challenge systemic issues and make tangible change, both in the corporate world and beyond. Their bond deepened, forged in the heat of the fire that had once separated them. From strangers to trusted partners, Marcus and Richard shared a respect for each other that transcended their differences. What began as a chance encounter in a life-or-death situation blossomed into a partnership rooted in shared values and a commitment to equality. Through their journey, they learned that true heroism isn't just about surviving the flames. It's about using what you've overcome to help others rise above their challenges as well. Together, Marcus and Richard proved that when two people stand side by side, regardless of their backgrounds, they can transform not just their lives, but the world around them.